So I've got a couple things against me for this presentation. First of all, like when I wrote it, it was something that I think could have easily lasted an hour. And then they called me and said, hey, it's a 20-minute presentation with 10 minutes for questions. So I'm like, Lord have mercy. That is bad news. I'm getting feedback. You hear that at all, or is it okay? You guys are hearing feedback, or no, it's okay? All right. The other thing is that I'm a wanderer, and I like to walk around and whatnot. And they're like, if you walk around, you're going to walk away from the microphone, and we can't have that. So I'm tied to the podium, and I have to do this hour-long presentation in 20 minutes. So everybody buckle up, and let's see how we can do. So the title of the presentation is Identity in Depth, the Evolution of Defense. And quite honestly, this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart. We're going to see a couple of those things in this presentation. Basically, there's a reason why I'm giving this presentation. It's because I truly believe in what we're about to talk about, what we're about to say. With that, let's take a look at some of these session objectives and takeaways, and I'll go ahead and open these up. First and foremost, the traditional approach to security. Here I am walking away from the mic. They told me not to do that. First and foremost, the traditional approach to security isn't working, and I hope to establish that in this presentation and put it in terms that I think most of the people in this room will agree with. The way that we're going to fix this is basically with the folks in this room. And then again, talking about things that are near and dear to my heart, this last part is how we need to engage with the business. Again, if you know who I am and where I'm from, that'll kind of make sense. So I'll tell you a little bit about who I am and where I'm from. So basically, I'm a principal security advisor for One Identity, which, as some of you know, used to be a part of Quest Software. We basically took the security assets of Quest Software and created a new company out of it. I spend my time visiting businesses every single day. So, the experiences I have where I've been with major corporations, government entities, small companies, you name it. I'm basically an observer of culture and an observer on a much wider scale than I think what some of the folks in this room get to see, where they have kind of like this myopic view of their company. And so hopefully some of the things that I have to say and some of the things I have to share are kind of educational. I don't think I'm going to tell anybody something they don't already know. All right, so there's no technological breakthroughs that are going to be talked about today. Nothing like that necessarily. But I hope to make the conversation in a way that's a little bit different than you've heard it before. And I was talking to some of my colleagues earlier. I said, it's okay if I say this is a puff piece, right? Making sure that was culturally acceptable. This entire presentation to me is a puff piece. What I want to do is I want you guys to realize how important you are. I mean, literally realize how important you are. And there's a reason, again, for that. I want you guys to take what we're talking about here and go back to your companies and say, look, guys, this is way more important than I had originally thought, okay? And one of the reasons for that, too, is that as I go and visit these companies, and we're going to talk about this, this is this last bullet point. One of the reasons why I like to talk about this is because I've literally been in conversations. There was an article I wrote recently. It was in Security Now. I can't remember where it was, but it talked about a CIO that I met with once. And sitting with the CIO, we realized that they didn't have a technology problem. They had a cultural problem. And one of the things that we said to him is, what if you today, this is the CIO of a major Silicon Valley company that every single person in here knows. I said, what if you today said, I need to assemble all the business leaders and have a meeting with them and talk to them about how important this stuff is? And I think the response that we got was a laugh. He literally laughed about it, like, there's no way I'm going to do that. So this is real life stuff, right? And so we're going to talk about that a little bit too. Without any further ado, though, let's get started, because like I said, I've got an hour-long presentation that I'm going to fit into 20 minutes or so. So let's talk about what my point is, right? The evolution of defense and where what we have today isn't working. I'll go ahead and open these bullet points up. Basically, the security philosophy of what folks do today, and a lot of people in this room, it's really interesting. I would almost want to take a poll, but I won't do it. How many folks that are in identity really believe they're like a part of security? How many folks believe they're just kind of like helping the company, kind of like an offshoot of HR? Maybe I'm in finance, right? When I was originally doing security, I was part of finance, which is really interesting. But when we think about security, traditionally, I run into a lot of people that say, no, the security people are the firewall guys, the network infrastructure guys, the guys that are putting together this platform and this blade and this whatever and whatever. This is basically called defense in depth, all right? And that's what we're going to talk about, how this has evolved. The philosophy of defense in depth goes way back to the Roman times, right? We know this, where you would build these concentric layers of defense that would weaken the enemy as they got closer and closer and close to whatever you're protecting. And it's exactly the same thing today. It's just called defense in depth, right? So the firewall, the application barriers, all this kind of stuff, it's defense in depth. So let's take a look at what defense in depth actually looks like at almost like an architectural view, right? So the first thing we're going to have is we're going to have a device, okay? This is the stuff that all you guys should know. We're going to have the device, that's your computer, that's your laptop, that's your mobile phone, stuff like that. Then we have application layers and barriers inside applications, security features and whatnot inside the application layer. We have the same thing in servers, in our network, and then we have the physical and the human, which can be defeated when you're wearing an exterminator outfit and you bring in a clipboard and you say, I'm supposed to do bug killing in your server room, and they walk you right into it, right? Now, I'm going to take this, I'm going to beat up a customer that we're all familiar with, and you're probably going to go, oh, here we go again. We're going to hear about the Target breach. I'm not picking on Target, but it just so happens that we know enough about the Target breach that we can really dissect it and really do some great studies upon it. So let's look at how every single one of these layers was defeated in the Target breach. So the first thing basically was the user was phished. This was an HVAC contractor. He was phished, they got access to his computer, and they installed the Citadel virus. Right? The Citadel virus basically sat there and waited for him to log in, and it was going to capture his credentials. After that was done, they replayed the credentials against the network. Then they stole the admin credentials through things that we hope Red Forest types of philosophies protect us from. After that, they created a backdoor in the application layer, and they installed a Trojan on the application. So it was the pause RAM Trojan horse, basically looked for credit card numbers in memory on the point of sale devices. This is defense in depth. And through what we're going to talk about today, it didn't matter. Plain simple didn't matter, right? It didn't do anything to protect Target. And there's quite honestly very little they could have done with this type of philosophy alone that wouldn't have stopped that attack, all right? So how has defense in depth been working for you? We're going to take a little pop quiz. So the question is, fill in the blank. Have you heard these phrases before? You've already been, anybody? Yeah, hacked. How about this one? They're already in the walls, right? It's funny, I did this presentation before, and I brought this up right here. Pwned is also an acceptable answer, and I had one of my colleagues say, hey, you misspelled owned. And I'm like, dude, you're out of the vernacular. It's pwned, trust me. Let's think about the Sony hack, right? Sony Pictures. When the movie was coming out that was about North Korea, what was it called? The Interview, right? The next thing you know, North Korea had hacked Sony Pictures. They had put a wallpaper up on every single computer in the room, or every single computer in the company, and they stole their emails, broadcasted them live. There was a lot of dirty laundry there. Do you think it was serendipitous that the time that they needed to hack Sony Pictures, they just somehow got in at that moment? No, a lot of people believe they were already there. Nation states, big actors, big attackers and whatnot, they're basically putting in sleeper cells in as many places as they can. It's an active pursuit to breach, but they're not necessarily pulling the trigger on those breaches until they need to, and I think this is the case. I haven't really found any evidence for it, but I'm comfortable that it's the case with Sony Pictures, unless someone can tell me I'm wrong, in which case the door's right in the back. So what I want to say is that, well, basically, let's talk about this. Let's look at the population of people that are attacking today, okay? And then I want to ask the question, are today's hackers actually hackers? And out of the population, from what I study and what I see when I work with these companies, I'm seeing a population of people that are breaching, right? Let's just consider these individuals like a ratio. And I'm saying hackers do exist, but let's talk about what a hacker actually is, right, y'all? So a hacker is someone who has coding skill, network knowledge. They're highly technical. In some cases, like with nation states and whatnot, there are massive office rooms filled with firewall devices from every vendor, network perimeter devices, all this kind of stuff. And they do nothing but look for zero-day exploits, right? Exploits that basically haven't been secured yet. And they're writing code and they're trying to break in and all this kind of stuff. Hackers exist, okay? But the people that are breaking into companies today, the people that are going to break into your company, is not highly likely it's going to be this proportion of hackers. We're going to say something else here. So the question is, if these guys are hackers, right here, then who are these guys, right? And so I'm going to say very simply, we've all heard of it. This guy is an identity thief. That's all these people are today, right? Remember what we're here for, talking about identity and identity in depth and whatnot. This guy's just an identity thief. The tools they use, things like social engineering. We all know what that is, right? It's the easiest one. As a matter of fact, I get told I do too many anecdotes, but this one's a good one. I was in a, some of them suck. Am I allowed to say suck on a recorded? Yeah. So anyway, I was on with a CISO level, if I think, of a big company in New York. And they said, if they're here, they're probably going to know this, but I'm not mentioning who it was. And they said, we want to lock down our Windows workstations with like multi-factor. And I said, great, I can help you with that. We do that. But I don't want any tokens. I don't want anything. I don't want, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, how are you going to do it? Well, like Q&A. It'll ask the user questions and they'll get in. And I said, oh, like, what's your dog's name, things like that. She says, yeah. I said, do you have a dog? And 5 seconds later, she said, yeah, it's Fufu, it's a poodle, da da da. I said, okay, I just got your question. I said, I can't in good conscience let you do that because this becomes a no-brainer, okay? Let's take a look at another technique. Someone with a credit card. Basically, if you have a credit card, you can get hacking as a service, right? Breach as a service. Just go out there, swipe your credit card, say what you want to have a denial of service attack put on, say which company you want to basically try to break into. The hacker's done the work for you. You don't have to have any special skill whatsoever. Just can you swipe a credit card, you're good to go. Script kiddies. Script kiddies is similar to someone with a credit card, but these are the people that are basically saying, again, I'm going to do a denial of service attack, or tell me what type of web server this company is running, or what was the kids' school recently, and they had a database with all the children's personal data, and it was secured with the default password. The script kiddie has no idea how to get that information, right? But he can execute something that he can buy and find this very quickly, and the next thing you know, he's got credentials to steal your database, right? This is not hard to do. You don't have to be a hacker to do this. And then finally, phishing. We saw the Target attack was basically the result when it started as a phishing attack. So my dad gets phished all the time, and he falls into it every single time. It's amazing. He's constantly asking me to help him. But this is, he got an email recently where you haven't paid your car rental fee in Italy. Attached is your receipt or whatever. Please open it up and pay us. And he opened it up, and it started downloading stuff. And I'm like, Dad, when's the last time you rented a car in Italy? And he says, well, I never have, but I was wondering. And I'm like, for crying out loud. So if Dad watches this recording, sorry, Dad, it's a mistake. It's a great example of phishing. What is this person's goal as an identity thief, right? They just need to pretend to be someone else. That's all they want to do. And in the beginning, it's usually pretty simple. They're going to grab the credentials of someone like Joe User, right? This is a starting point. Maybe this is basically what happened with Target again, not to beat them up, but it's a great case study. So we appreciate they were hacked, so we have so much fodder to talk about. It's just a starting point, right? This doesn't really give me any privileged credentials or any privileged access or anything like that, but I don't need that, right? A greater example is the Road Warrior, right? A lot of the folks in this room are salespeople and whatnot. If I have your credentials, now I can get access to competitive sales data, all this other kind of stuff. This still isn't the goal, okay? What I want is this one. I want admin access. And once I get that admin access, I'm going to produce my backdoor record in Active Directory. I'm going to drop all the things I've been using to connect with this guy that I phished. I'm now Joe Blow in your directory, and I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and you're never going to know I'm there because you don't necessarily have anything to tell me that I'm there, right? And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more depth. The simple fact is, let's look at this quote. Everybody knows the, what was it, the Department of Homeland, the OPM, Office of Personnel Management with the federal government. A lot of my colleagues were in that database, right? Look at some of the quotes here from Ars Technica. Encryption wouldn't have helped in this case because the attackers gained valid user credentials, right? What about the firewall? Well, it's irrelevant. Well, what about the fact that whatever, the application, it doesn't matter. The person had the credentials, right? What about all those layers of defense that we put in place? Irrelevant, doesn't matter. Let's take a look at another quote. This guy might be here, I don't know, John. He says, in an environment where firewalls are becoming increasingly irrelevant, what does on-premise mean to a company in a world of cloud and mobile? And endpoint antivirus efficacy is laughable. All right, so basically this person's saying, here's something I will ask the audience. Who does not have any antivirus on their machine with the exception of like Windows Defender? Yeah, a couple people? Yeah, what's the point? For the folks that have, McAfee, and God bless them, all that kind of stuff, but it just doesn't matter anymore. All right, so let's wrap this up. Not wrap it up, but let's kind of accelerate this a little bit. In summary, it's pretty clear to see that with every single breach we can think of, the traditional layers of defense, the traditional people that we look at and say, you guys are the security people, right? That's not working anymore, all right? And it's easy to point out where it basically just doesn't matter, okay? So the physical security doesn't matter. It's easy to phish people. The firewalls have been extinguished. If you have the right credentials to get through, what difference does a firewall make? The network doesn't have a clue, right? Your network's basically a slave to the attacker. And your directory is an accomplice, right? I have my backdoor accounts in there. You have no idea that I'm in there, right? All the traditional layers of defense are irrelevant, okay? Now, with that said, before people say that I'm some sort of a fascist of security, not having these layers in place would be negligent. It's like building a house and saying, yeah, it's like building a house and saying I don't need to put locks on my door. The simple point is that we all know that locks are for honest people, okay? And there are kids and whatnot, oh, Lord knows I did it when I was a kid, that are gonna try to look for vulnerabilities. They're gonna stop, I'm gonna connect and see what I can do. Not anymore, I'm a white hat these days, but it's just that it's not working anymore, right? So what we need is identity in depth. All right, so what's identity in depth? Here's a definition. You can look this up right here on the screen because I don't think it exists anywhere else. It's the concept of augmenting traditional forms of cybersecurity with modern, intelligent, and adaptive identity-centric solutions. Right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna say, take that traditional defense in depth philosophy and take every single one of those layers and adapt it with identity. This is why I'm saying if you're a vendor and you're here, take this to your customers. Just say that, hey, the guys from One Identity said this. It's really kind of a great philosophy. If you are a corporate person, a corporate security person, a corporate identity person, you need to go back, take this presentation, put it to heart, and share this information with your company and say, hey, look, I'm kind of looking at identity in a whole new light. We've got to take these steps, not because it's a nice to have or because we're making our auditors happy. It's because it's the only way we're going to stop these breaches. It's the truth. If you have the right ID to get in, what difference does all these layers make, right? So, how can we do this? Again, with the time I have going a little bit fast, we'll hope to give time for Q&A. These are some examples of identity management solutions, right? We've got identity management solutions. They're cloud aware. They can capture out-of-band changes, which is really awesome if someone creates a backdoor account, right? We're going to find that out. We're going to say, hey, where did this Joe Blow account come from? This isn't right. Or it didn't go through the proper workflows, things like that. Generally speaking, hackers don't execute workflows, but maybe. Web access management solutions today have risk analysis and adaptive authentication. When I'm connecting from North Korea, right, our solutions say you shouldn't be connecting from North Korea. They're smart enough to know that because they know about my identity and they know about my behavioral analytics. Privileged account management, things like credential vaulting, multi-factor, et cetera. If we were to apply this to a firewall, maybe you could do something like this, right? Your firewall should know who you are, plain and simple. And if it doesn't, find the solution that helps you do that. So when you connect and you're trying to access something through the firewall, it can plain and simple say, you're not allowed to get to the Active Directory layer, right? Or you're not allowed to get to this application, but I need to allow that for my scientists. I don't need to allow that for the research team, right? Your firewall needs to have that type of intelligence. And if you're not doing multi-factor, then please, get out of the 90s, because I wouldn't say the 80s. Application authentication and authorization, right? Again, we got to have active real-time role management through our identity platforms, web access management when I'm accessing those applications that's intelligent enough to know that you haven't accessed application in 6 months. First of all, your identity platform should remove that stale provision, right? But second of all, your web access management layer should be smart enough to say, I'm going to prompt you for multi-factor. If you don't have that layer today, then the fact that I stole that user's credentials, I'm in. I'm proving my point. Multi-factor, again, it goes without saying. Most breaches are going to be nipped in the bud with multi-factor. There's ways to break that too, but we won't get into that. Web access, again, my identity platform should give me forensics about this user that I can use to calculate with my risk engine, and again, multi-factor. I'm not beating this up necessarily to show you guys tons of real details. I'm just trying to get the point across before we wrap up here. Again, I don't have a tremendous amount of time. Finally, domain administration. When we talk about red forest, the way that I like to put it is that after you read the report from Microsoft of how to create a red forest, most identity people curl up into a fetal position crying in the corner. It's terribly expensive and it's daunting to do, but you can do it virtually with the stuff that you got in the Expo Center, right? So your domain administration, again, should know when an account is created out of band. No one in your environment should have access to Active Directory, period. How come you don't have a firewall between your Active Directory and your users, right? And then secure your privileged access management solution that's accessing your Active Directory with some sort of a password vaulting technology, right? I mean, it just goes on and on and on. What I want to see is I want to see you guys go back and talk to the security people and talk about the layers of security they have in place. And then you guys are the identity experts that now have kind of like elevated your importance when you tell them that, guys, traditional security just simply isn't working, all right? So let's move on a little bit. Here's where I'm going to do a major change of gears, all right? And there's a reason. There's a reason. We'll get into it. So success demands cooperation. We've heard it over and over and over again, and if you haven't, then you need to be listening more. Security people cannot get in the way of the agility of the business, right? We can't hurt business. We can't get in the way. Now more than ever, there's a lot of reasons for that. We'll get into a couple of anecdotes in a second. You've got to align with the business goals. You have to have a seat at the table. The CISO I was talking about that laughed when I said you need to meet with the executives from the different business units, that can't happen to you, all right? And it might be happening today, right? This might be the case. Again, we're going to take a little change of gears here. In a world of IT transformation, business speed and agility is paramount. So what I'm saying is that you guys need to go back today and talk to the business, all right? And so here's where I'm going to change gears just a little bit. And I'm not really talking about identity in depth, but unfortunately you guys are, you could be rude and get up. But the thing is that I see this every single day when I talk to security people and I talk about their relationship with the business. And I just wanted to spend a couple of seconds on this just to kind of drive this point home. To me, I see a spectrum of security folks and what their relationships are with the business. It's a spectrum, it's a wide spectrum. But on either end are basically these two use cases. And the first use case is the security team that's basically not going to be happy until you can't do your job, right? I call them the security bullies. This is what we had when I was at Disney. If you look me up, you'll see I was there for quite a long time. We used to say that the security team's goal was to basically make our workstations completely unusable, and only at that point would they be happy. So, freaking security people. I'm an identity guy. I'm not a security guy, right? No, we're all security. So what happens in a place where this happens? The security folks that are security bullies, basically I've got so many anecdotes about this. Let's pick this one. Sometimes, like I said, I go a little crazy on anecdotes. So at this big Mickey Mouse company I used to work for, I won't tell you what it was called, there's a guy that came up to me once and he said, "Joe, you're a technical guy. I need your help." I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "I am the social media guy for Disneyland. That's all I do. Facebook, Twitter, you name it. They just put a new security policy in that blocks all social media." And I went and made a request, and they turned it down. This is this guy's freaking job, okay? And so he said, "Can you help me write a technical request that will hopefully make it clear to the security people that I need access to Facebook?" So not only did we put in a technical request that made more sense, but I knew the tools that were in place. I knew how we could create a group that would allow him through the web proxy to get to these things based upon the business unit he belongs to. I put all that detail in there. They shut us down. They denied it. This guy's job is social media, okay? So what do? I'm a developer. I hacked the security policy, installed a hack on his machine, and he could go to wherever he wanted to get to, okay? So what happened at the end of the day isn't that we created a more secure environment. It's that the business unit said, "Screw security, I'm going to go get a credit card and do what I want to do." And with cloud these days, holy cow, your architectural drawings are stored who knows where. Your secret media photo shoots for the next release of your car are stored who knows where. You don't know how they're getting there, or what the security controls are, all that kind of stuff, right? It's all in the cloud. If you don't cooperate with the business, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do, and it's going to come on all of us, right? It's not just that when we get in the Wall Street Journal, the CIO's in trouble. I mean, we all get in trouble, right? It hurts our companies. That's the security bully. It's not good if you guys in this room are security bullies. You need to change that, right? On the other side of the spectrum is this one. This is security being the elephant in the room, where the idea of you even being considered as a partner of the business is just laughable. There's no point of you even being there. Just reset my password, right? This is basically like the opposite of being a bully. This is basically being like, ignored. And this is another problem that I see in the industry, okay? And if you're one of these people that need to be ignored, now is the time to change that relationship. But you need to change it with something that has meaning to it, right? And it can't just be like, hey, identity is important. Take this message, which again is the reason why I'm doing this. Take this message and go back. I kind of feel like an evangelist. I need like something to thump on. Take this message and go back and say, this is way more important than we thought. I went to CIS. We learned this stuff. Let's talk about this in detail, right? So, last slide, and we hopefully will have some time for Q&A if you guys want to ask some questions or whatever. If you're the elephant in the room, now is not the time to be bashful, right? Explain the dangers and explain the solutions. You got to get a little bit of courage in there and say, look, business, I'm here to work with you. I'm not going to get in your way. But we need to realize the importance of identity, and the theories of identity in depth are the only way we're going to protect ourselves, right? And then finally, if you're a bully, you got to redefine your relationships. Seriously, humble yourself and go in and say, we realize we've made mistakes in the past. We've kind of been an inhibitor to business. All that needs to change because we want to succeed the same way that you guys want to, right? And then again, talk to them about this and how you realize that I can't do these things without your help, right? We need to basically be together and work as partners on this. And then finally, the security gaps that we see today in identity in depth, they need to be addressed. And it simply is not going to be addressed with implementing the technology again and again and again the way it's being done today. The only way to do this is identity in depth. And that's the stuff that we're here for today. So that's my presentation. Hopefully I got an hour-long presentation in 20 minutes. My name's Joe Campbell. That's my email address if you guys want to fire off an email to me. But any questions? First session. Huh?
I wanted to ask about the target breach. And one of the main reasons the target breach was so successful was not that nobody knew that there was attackers in the system, but that nobody was paying attention to all the security warnings that were going on. So if somebody had paid attention to those security warnings, then the target breach would not have been of the magnitude that it ended up being.
That's a very good point.
Costing the CEO and the CIO and the CSO both their jobs.
You think that Target has a monopoly in the business, with the exception maybe of Walmart. They don't. They lost so much money from this breach. It's documented. You can go look it up. Some billion something in the first quarter. Identity solutions will elevate that, right? Identity solutions should show you a heat map of risk, right? There should be reporting systems that are put in place. It isn't something that I need to go audit what accounts have been created recently. It needs to be proactive. And the stuff that we have in this building, the stuff that we're talking about this week, should give that proactive response to you that you need to identify whatever layer is being breached. Yeah, because they can all be augmented with identity. Any other questions, statements? Yeah.
So the Navy, we used to call defense in depth assured eventual defeat.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so if you could wave a wand, all the identity stuff that you showed up there, other than that, what's the one other thing that
Yeah.
you would have that would make this whole thing better?
So there have been times where I've been meeting with people and I've said, what is your current list of priorities? And just for example, if these 3 things I'm about to talk about aren't on the current list, I literally say stop every program you have and shift these things down. Multi-factor is a no-brainer. It has to be brought in. There are barriers to multi-factor from the users though. They need to have a wide range of token choices that matches the individual's culture. And you can't bludgeon people with multi-factor. Okay, so if I open up my laptop and connect to the HR system and I get a multi-factor prompt, I close it, open it back up again, and immediately get another multi-factor prompt. This means you're bludgeoning users. And again, I've talked to probably way more customers than y'all have if you guys actually work for companies. I've had guys tell me, well, we implemented, but the VP called us and said, please turn it off. Right? How many people have had that experience? Like, this is bothering me. So the second thing you need to do is basically augment your multi-factor and all the other systems with risk, behavioral analytics, right? Make intelligent decisions. If you're not executing risk today, then basically you're allowing connections to your environment from anywhere with no intelligence being acted upon it, okay? We've got to act upon it with intelligence. So multi-factor risk analysis, which basically falls into the web access management type of category. And then finally, privileged access management. That needs to be nipped in the bud. And so what a lot of people call credential vaulting, the idea of saying if an admin has credentials to an AD server or a secure directory or a database or something like that, that's just plain out can't happen. Nobody should know the admin credentials to anything. It should be in a library system or through a proxy where everything's recorded, et cetera. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but these are the things I would start with. If you don't have multi-factor, do it right, use risk-based intelligence to elevate to multi-factor. And then finally, secure password vaulting for privileged accounts. It's just got to be done. Then you can start getting to some of the other things. I don't know if that addressed your question at all.
Are you, for privileged access, are you recommending things like keys and HSMs for access, or just simple password management?
I would call it closer to a password manager type solution, right? So I've seen some, like our own, that come as like an appliance, right? And I'm not here to plug any particular technology, but this is the type of technology. So for instance, we just did a virtual red forest for some entity somewhere. And to do that, we put basically an Active Directory firewall in place so that the only way you could get through it was through a proxy application. The proxy application would connect to Active Directory, but only through a service account. Once we installed it, we hooked it up to our privileged management system. It immediately connected that service, accessed it, changed the password so nobody knows what that is, right? And so all the systems that are connecting to things, interconnecting back-end systems, those credentials shouldn't be something some guy's got written in an Excel document, okay? Then the other thing is that when you have like Unix level root admins and things like that, when they're connecting, they shouldn't know those credentials either. Because who's seen the XKCD cartoon where the way you get credentials is by beating the guy over the head with a wrench? Right, I shouldn't even know what those credentials are, right? And so the method that I take to get to a Unix system or something like that is either I check it out temporarily, or I go through that device as a proxy, so it never even gives me the credentials to begin with, and then it records everything that I do. With that, I think we're kind of out of time, guys. I apologize, but I'll be here in the back of the room. Thank you.